Welcome back to Call Me By Your Game, the podcast where I, your host, Connor McCabe, bring on a guest to hear from them about a memorable or meaningful video game from a particular moment in their life. On the show, you know that we talk to our guest as much about what made playing that game special and why they brought it on today, as we will get into the context of how and when they had this meaningful time with it. A little bit of housekeeping up top is that anything that my guest or I plug today, wherever you're listening or watching, if you scroll down in the show notes, you're going to find a link to those glorious plugs, whether it be social media, episodes of podcasts that have aired years ago, or even our Patreon, which, if you didn't know, we're part of a Patreon network, Super NPC Radio. We have bonus video game podcasts aside from this one that we release every single week for people who support us over there. You can also support us at there's a free tier on the Patreon where you get all of our free shows for free. So you might actually be a free Patreon subscriber who is getting this episode in your feed as well. Or you could just be someone watching on YouTube, listening on Apple Podcasts. Quick disclaimer though, I actually have a bit of housekeeping news to go through today. And that is that it has to do with Patreon. When it comes to Patreon through the Apple Store, so if you are an iPhone user, or I guess like an iPad user, and you subscribe to things via the Patreon app, due to a restriction that Apple has, Patreon is now required to charge patrons 30% on top of their original subscription fee. So if let's say you're a part of our $5 DJ Toad tier, you're also being charged an additional 30% that just goes to Apple, and it has to do with them wanting to get every cent they can out of apps in the App Store. So we would actually encourage you, instead of subscribing via the podcast app, the Patreon app through the App Store, go to a browser and find us. So bring this up on a computer if you're doing that. Also, if you're an existing member before November 1st, this does not apply to you. So you will not be charged an additional 30%. It's only new ones moving forward. I'll probably talk about this for a few episodes moving forward. But again, if you're interested in catching our current Games Club or our legacy episodes of past, don't do it through the Patreon app on your phone. You can use it, but I would subscribe through a browser. That's it. I've actually, lately really gotten the housekeeping down to such a quick, minute and a half before I introduce the guest, and now doubled that time. But we've got a special guest for you today, folks. A returning champion. Could have looked this up before. My guest is going to be episode 25, where he discussed The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Please welcome to the podcast, Paper Mario fan, July Diaz.
Hello, Connor. Thank you for having me back. Happy to be
welcome.
here. I love housekeeping. I love keeping the house clean. And
what could you want?
Honestly, I wish there was a little bit more of that in this game, even though I love this game.
Yes. If only there was, perhaps like a chapter where you are filling in as like a hotel maid or something like that.
Yeah, or if even in this game you have different partners, different characters that are sort of variants on existing characters. I wonder if there would have been. I would have loved to see like a broom, like a goofy little broom character.
Oh yes, yeah. So just like a broom that sort of has like little eyes on it. That
yes.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. I think they would have called him Sweepy.
Yeah, I'm thinking like Clippy.
Oh yes.
I mean, we all know Clippy, but it's sort of like that.
Yes, and I think the fun twist on Sweepy is not only is he a broom named Sweepy, but he's also a little tired. So it's kind of, people are wondering like, is Sweepy?
Oh yeah.
He can't pronounce the L, which is it? And turns out July, it's both.
And actually, I want to retract my my Clippy. He looks more like one of Snow White's dwarves.
Yes. Okay. Yes. I'm liking this, and I'm imagining that he's left his family of 6 other dwarves that he spends time with. Other brooms.
Yes.
I think, July, we gotta get on this right now. We gotta write some fanfic.
We're getting on this. I'm picturing. I want to picture more of this. What the character of Sweepy looks like. I think he does look like a dwarf, and he has a giant mustache, a la Mario.
Yes.
But it's so big that people mistake it for like the brushes of a broom.
Yes.
And so Mario will pick him up and sort of just use his face to sweep up enemies and whatnot.
Yeah, turning the broom very much just on its side parallel to the ground in order to use what he thinks is the broom bristles, but it's the mustache.
Yes.
July, I have a piece of news for you outside of our perfect riff that we just did, is that I checked.
I have much more to say about sweeping, by the way,
okay.
later on the show.
Oh, good. You were on episode 23, was your debut, where we discussed Ocarina of Time.
Yes. If I'm not mistaken, that was a recording we did during the pandemic. Was that right? You
were one of the first handful of episodes that I did remotely. I actually remember my computer was on that wall where those, for the YouTube viewers, I love when I have a visual and I can just remind people that we're on YouTube. That's where my computer was set up, and I think we were recording, this happened with a recent guest, via Zencaster, so it was just an audio format. We didn't even see each other's faces,
No.
and yeah, I heard from you about Ocarina of Time.
Yeah, I wonder if I could be able to do something like that. Now, I can't. I feel like that's so foreign. I feel like I need to see you. You know what I mean? To get the full experience of the podcast.
Like, a phone call is one thing when the connection's good, but when it's the internet and you're never sure, are we lagging? Do I need to give this person extra space? Yeah, but from many moons ago, you were on that. You were also on an
I agree.
episode-
Yeah, Sweepy's a good name.
Yes, of course. Yeah, that's really what I was getting at.
Sorry, I think I lagged for about 2 minutes.
Oh, no, we've got lag on Zoom, too. You've been on a number of co-op episodes on this show as well, the monthly bonuses that we do. And as I was thinking about that, I was like, I didn't have you on this year, but you've been on a number of times. We talked about Mario Kart Double Dash. We've talked about TMNT Turtles in Time.
We did.
I'm wondering if there's other one. Again, research I could have done before the show.
Now, refresh my memory. Was TMNT this year?
It wasn't, but I re-released it this year.
I see.
So I've started releasing the old the co-op episodes on the free feed, at the very last week of each month, just because I want more people than our lovely group of patrons to be able to listen to those. So,
sure.
So that was there. But you also, July, were on an episode almost exactly. It will be 2 years ago for this release of To the Week, where we talked about our top 10 favorite video games of all time.
Oh, yes.
And I'm almost certain the game you've brought on for the main event today is a game that was on your list. I'm pretty sure.
I believe so, yeah. I'd have to look up that list again, but I mean, this is a no-brainer top 10 list contender for me. I mean, one more. I mean, you've played this, right?
I have, yes.
Yes. Okay, so you know what I'm talking about.
I know the heavy bat that this game swings. This game is an all-timer. I mean, heck, really quick, I'll have you introduce it in just a second, but July, I know you, you're one of the regulars on the Super NPC Radio network of podcasts. You participate in our games club. You're on Video Games, a comedy show all the time. You used to host your own podcast, Inside Video Games, with July. And hey, it's not dead. It's just that there's not a new episode to report, but it's still out there somewhere.
It's still out there, yeah.
There we go.
Listen to it. Yeah, it's still available.
So people are familiar with you. You're a fantastic comedian. You work in you're a podcaster. We worked on a fun show together that I still hope we get to do something with.
Oh, me too.
Someday. But July, I know that you're just dying to just basically share your memoir with the listeners. So what do you want to share with them before we talk a little bit more about video games? Who is July Diaz?
I guess
I figured you would really love this part, by the way.
I guess it starts with a diaper and me being in that diaper.
Yes.
With the year, it's a little cloudy when that was.
Sure.
But,
as it should be.
Yeah, of course. I mean, what does it matter?
Age is just a number, I have been told.
I've heard that. I don't really subscribe to that phrase. I think that can be interpreted many odd ways. But yeah, I'll give you. You want me to give you a short my bio? Is that what's happening?
Why don't
right
we
now?
get your bio here in your own words? And by the way, I don't know if you could feel it,
Yes.
but I could feel sort of like a reverberation of the space-time continuum when you were talking about being in diapers but not knowing the year. I could feel listeners next week in the future when this episode comes out just screaming in just excitement for that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I'm just sort of a guy living in the internet, as we all do sometimes. I'm here speaking to you, dear listener. I've been on the internet since like AOL coming into the mail, and you being able to use that dial-up internet. I've visited many a chat room. Tumblr, remember that when that was huge? Loved Tumblr.
Do I?
Yeah. Twitter, the old school Twitter.
Never forget.
Never forget. And yeah, like you said, I'm a comedian. I'm a podcaster. I do many a podcasts based on video games with you and all the other folks on the Super NPC Radio, Patreon. Yeah, and I'm sort of just a fanatic of video games. There's so many out there. I wish I had all the time in the world to play them, but now I find myself have to be very selective of what I'm picking and playing. Even though I'd say so far, I don't know if other guests have talked about this on the show as of recently, but I feel like this year is actually a pretty good year for games, even though it doesn't seem like a lot of major releases.
I'm in complete agreement. I've heard last year was a seismic year for games, so I think any year after like following that would not feel like it was on the same level. And I've heard some people poo-poo this year in games. I actually think this has been an amazing year as well. So I'm in complete agreement. I just wanted to say that for any of the haters out there.
Yeah. But why are you hating out there?
Yeah, why are you hating? Just because, and I think sometimes that is because people don't play the games that are out, or like they're not for them. So they're like, well, it's not really a good year in gaming. What have I played? And then if you were asked them to repeat what they played that was new, they might have like a whole like 5 or 6 titles that are great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it has been a great year in gaming. Were you going to follow that up with something after I kind of jumped in there?
No. I just think also something that's kind of relevant in the past few years of gaming is and that kind of falls into what we're talking about today, is the continuation of the trend of a remake or a remaster, sort of a going back to the well of a pretty well-known game and kind of giving it a new fresh paint and putting it out there with minor adjustments and whatnot. And some people might not think that takes away from something brand new in an experience, but sometimes I think, especially the game we're talking about today, I think it's a great thing, because sometimes it's harder to find the original game out if you want to purchase it, on its original hardware, and then the resale market's crazy for it. And this way it also like expands its market to a bunch of new potential players. So I like that aspect of it.
Certainly more people are, I mean, we're hinting at it a bunch, but certainly more people are going to play the remake of the game that you brought on today than the original copy, just based on the amount of Nintendo Switches that are out there versus like the 32 million or so GameCubes that were sold.
Totally.
So anyway, I am, pumped to get into it more. Did you feel like you got to share enough about yourself?
I feel like you're kind of you want me to say? Do you want me to say something? Am I missing something?
No, I just don't want to cut you off before I move us on.
I guess I've recently grown a mustache. I think that's what Connor's hinting at. I don't.
Yeah, I've been doing. The audio listeners can't see, but I've been doing this the whole time, like.
Yeah. So I usually don't have this. I feel like
looks great though.
Thank you. I feel like I kind of grew it out in celebration for the guy we're talking about today.
Hey.
Because a lot of the characters in this game really like this guy's stash.
They sure do. One in particular that I'm thinking of that will hopefully come up a few times.
Yes.
Well, July, I'll continue to keep this thing rolling. We are going to talk about, your more recent history with gaming in just a second. But before we do, why don't we finally stop teasing the listener and introduce the game you brought on today for the main event, if you don't mind, to Call Me By Your Game.
Okay, yes. Today we're talking about Paper Mario, the 1,000-Year Door.
Can't wait. An absolute all-timer. I have a fun little story I want to share about this game, too. So I'm going to make it about myself later.
Please. Yeah.
We'll save that for the main event after the break. But July, it's funny, at this point, since you first came on the show in, I don't know, must have been like April or so of 2020, we've been like talking about games and sometimes playing, but mostly like we've been involved in video games with each other for longer since then than like before it. That's probably a confusing way to say that. Like, I think we started doing Jeremy's show together in like 2019. So it was like a year of that. And now we've been doing stuff for like 4.5 years. So
that sounds right. Yeah.
I'm sure that, you've played a lot of new stuff, probably some old stuff in the last few years. But when you think of playing video games from 2020 up until now, what is there a trend that comes to mind for you of at all, or are there some like mainstays that you want to talk about today?
Sure, yeah. I think I'm trying to put myself back into that time to now. I think previously, before 2020, I didn't really play a lot of roguelikes.
Oh. I
feel like that was a big thing. I feel like I played a lot of Hades. Gosh, there's this other one. I'm blanking on the name. Slay the Spire.
Oh,
that's another big one I put many hours in. Yeah, I think that was a whole genre of game that I didn't necessarily have a lot of time with that I really enjoy. I also played a little bit of Death Stranding at the beginning of 2020, and now it's full circle. We're playing it currently for the current Games Club, and I'm enjoying that.
Yes, yeah.
And then besides that, what I've been playing recently is actually two other sort of remake games. One is Sonic Generations X Shadow.
Oh, I was hoping you were going to talk about this because I knew we talked the other week, the weekend that it came out, you were going to pick this up. So what do we think about this game?
I love it. I love it so much. I didn't really play Shadow the Hedgehog, the original like standalone game. I definitely have played a little bit of it.
He has a gun, right?
He has a huge gun. I think in the beginning of the game, he talks a lot about like why hedgehogs should have, their rights to bear arms and whatnot. It's not necessarily the politics I, subscribe to for hedgehogs. Of course. But, hey, I'm not a hedgehog, so I can't speak for them. It's just my opinion. But, yeah, it does a cool thing. I don't know if you've ever played the original Sonic Generations.
No, I haven't.
It remixes that game and updates a bunch of stuff, like the graphics and music and whatnot. But also it adds a whole new campaign with Shadow the Hedgehog that the timeline takes place at the same time as that original game.
Yes.
And it adds in a lot of cool elements from Sonic Frontiers, gameplay-wise. There's like a nice, cool hub world where you enter all these like remixed and remastered classic levels from Shadow's history over the last couple years of his existence in the Sonic franchise. It's really cool. In the original Generations, though, and it's in this as well, but you play as Sonic the Hedgehog, and you're playing like almost like a 3D first person, third person view.
Oh, weird.
And then the second act levels are the classic 2D scroller level, but your character is rendered almost like the classic Sonic the Hedgehog look. So he looks more like cutesy, more kid-like, whereas now Sonic is kind of like a cool teen.
Yep.
So that comes back, but Shadow's character design doesn't change. It's just like the gameplay goes from like that third-person view to the 2D side-scrolling view.
That kind of makes me wish that they would have, just for the heck of it, made like, this is what Shadow would have looked like if you were designed in this way. And maybe there's something out there that's already like that, but that would be kind of fun, because I like it's sort of like the spiffed up 2D Sonic, or I guess 2D platforming Sonic design, right?
Yes, totally.
Yes.
But yeah, that's a lot of fun. I completed the game in like 2 days. I mean, it's a short campaign, but it has a lot of extra like collectible things and side missions and beat the high score type of things. That's always like a good way to have replayability in a game. But
yes,
for the main game, I beat that, and that was a lot of fun. And then the other game I've been playing a little bit is, I'm a big fighting game fan.
Oh yeah.
And Capcom released a collection of all the Marvel vs. Capcom variation games. So the first 2 games, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, as well as X-Men vs. Street Fighter, Marvel vs. Street Fighter, Marvel Superheroes, and the original X-Men fighting game that Capcom released. So that's all bundled together. And so I've been playing that quite a bit online, and I gotta say, I'm doing pretty well for myself out there.
I mean, I'm not surprised in the least, July. When we've gotten together with friends over the last couple of years to play video games, we have played a bunch of fighting games together, particularly Marvel vs. Capcom 2. I've watched you not even look at the screen and beat someone. So I know the kind of power you bring to the sticks when it comes to MVC.
Yes, and for the listeners, that was Jeremy Schmidt, who I was looking in the eyes and beat him mercilessly.
Jeremy has taken a lot, like, voluntary just beatings from you in many fighting games, I feel like. Like, didn't you play a lot of Street Fighter 6 together?
Yes, we played a little bit of that, and we played a bit of the other Capcom collection of Street Fighter games that was released, like, I want to say a year or 2 ago online. And I mean, there are games where he does beat me. The older, a little bit more slower original, like Street Fighter 2 style games, he definitely has me on
the games
that.
For like old people.
Yeah, like the real old timer games. I guess I'm like a young guy. I guess.
He's also kind of beats you at like bocce ball and backgammon, stuff like that.
Yeah, he beats me at that. He beats me at like spades. He beats me at
dominoes.
Dominoes. Yeah.
Well, I was really excited, and I think Marvel vs. Capcom 2 was a game that you had thrown out as an option to discuss. Mm-hmm. For you returning for a solo episode, but you had thrown out, Thousand Year Door was one we hadn't touched, so I sort of steered you that way. July, that brings up, talking about fighting games brings up a question that I wanted to ask you. I know you to be a particularly big fan of a few franchises that I feel like you play most of the entries in. When I think of about that, we've already covered one of those, which is the Sonic series. I know you're always down for some Sonic.
Oh yeah.
The other two that I associate you with, and you tell me what you think, are Zelda and Resident Evil. Does that feel fair? I know Zelda's kind of like, Ocarina's your favorite game ever, but how do those two feel?
That feels right. I feel like Resident Evil is kind of a newer thing for me. I definitely remember, seeing cousins play the originals on the PlayStation, and they would like take the TV outside, and it would be all dark. And
outside, like on the front yard.
Yeah, and that would be like a extra layer of like, I don't even want to see what's going on the screen. Like it was so terrifying as a kid.
Because in your house, like obviously you can imagine anything scary, like something coming through the closet or a window, or from under the bed. But if you're outside, it's kind of like endless points that you're vulnerable, it feels like.
Oh yeah, and especially if it's a night where everything's really quiet and all you can hear is the crickets, and then you're playing this survival horror game and
better not hear a dog bark.
Jump scare. Exactly. Yeah, I don't want to hear a crow, make a peep. Yeah,
not at all. So okay, that's kind of fun. And then we've got like an old stay franchise for you for Zelda and a newer one. I know we got to play Resident Evil 2 Remake for our Games Club about a year ago right now. We were playing that, which I still really look back fondly on that Games Club in particular. I don't know if it was like that it timed up well with Scary Season or what, but
again, another remake, another well done remake. And also the more recent Resident Evil 4 remake is another example of when done well. I mean, it's
like as good as it gets.
It's exactly. And I haven't played the new Silent Hill 2 remake, but I've heard great things about that as well.
Yes. When you think of the Resident Evil franchise, is your favorite game one of the remakes, or is it one of the maybe like 7 or 8 with the first person perspective?
So when I picked up, I believe 7 is the first person one, correct?
I think so, yeah.
So I was house sitting when that game first came out, and I picked it up at my friend's local GameStop right down the block, went over back to his place, put it in there, started the game up. I'm alone in this apartment, and just experiencing this. I maybe played half an hour and was like, that's enough for me. Then the next day I went back and returned the game. I got Yakuza 0 instead.
I didn't know this.
I was like, no, I can't. I wouldn't even categorize myself as like a big horror fan.
Sure.
I like the occasional like horror film or whatever, but I just I couldn't get through that experience.
That game,
I've since went back and had a great time with it,
yes,
but at the time I couldn't deal with it.
I completely understand that. While RE2 Remake's the only Resident Evil that I've ever finished, 7 was the first I played because it used to be on the old back when they had the PS Plus collection. When I think it was when the PS5 first came out, you had access to like 20 games as long as you were a subscriber, and like a lot of enormous titles. So I played that, and it immediately, it's not like even, I feel like like some of them I feel like it's a slow build to when it really bombards you with the fear or danger or something creepy. And that game I felt like was, as soon as you turned it on, it was like, oh, once you get to the house, it's hell the whole time.
Oh yeah.
So, but I think you were finishing a thought though.
Yeah, I was mostly disgusted by the food that the characters were eating.
Yes.
It was just so awful. And yeah, I mean, I would say Resident Evil 2 Remake, whenever that first came out and I played it, that immediately became my favorite of the franchise as a whole, I think. And I still think it's up there. I think I had more experience watching others play the original 3, Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, and like have a lot of like memories of that and thinking that was like cool, and Nemesis design being cool, and like just like the whole thing of you never know when he's gonna pop out and you gotta like run away and whatnot. But it just the remake of that didn't hit me as hard as 2 did.
Yeah, I feel like I heard that from, I think, even Roxy and McCaller, who really liked that game. I want to say that they have a similar feeling as you, which is it just didn't quite do it like the others did, or like the original.
Yes, and I think there's also criticisms that it was a shorter campaign than 2, which, sure, but, you know, for a company to go out of their way to just even go back and remake all these games, it seems like they're going to maybe do 5 if they did 4.
Yeah.
I think that's like incredible. They didn't need to do that. And I did enjoy 3 very, very much. I just think it strays so different from the original. I mean, and as does 2, but I'd say 4 is a little bit more comparable gameplay wise to the remake to the original 4. But yeah, out of all of the Resident Evils, and I haven't played all of the other like spin-off Resident Evil games. I know there's like a ton for PS2 and there's a Dreamcast one. I'm just talking about like the main series ones. I think 2 Remake's probably my favorite.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I selfishly, I know we've talked about it a little bit. I think I've previewed it on the show. At some point next year, for our Games Club, like the first Games Club of next season is going to be games that finished as a runner-up in our elections. So, but another category that we're going to be doing is going to be sequels to series we've already done. So like the nominees for that are going to be something like Resident Evil 4 Remake or Pokemon Gold and Silver. So I selfishly hope we get to play RE4 because I loved 2 Remake so much.
Oh yeah, and you're going to love RE4 Remake for sure if you loved RE2 Remake. It expands on it so much, and yeah, I mean you get to see the famous merchant character, which we all love.
Yes. I can't wait for that and just spend more time with our boy Leon. A couple more things for you before we move on. We talked about Resident Evil a little bit. I want to just like shine the light on Zelda a bit. We of course, got that's not exactly a perfect impression, but the sound I'm doing when he falls from too far. You're a huge Zelda fan. Ocarina, I know, at least when we talked last, was your favorite game of all time. We did the Zelda Games Club where you, I think, played through more games than any of us because you kind of played along with the whole series.
Yes, I did.
When it comes to Zelda, do you want to like highlight anything right now, whether it be like the more recent entries in the series like Tears of the Kingdom or like an old one that you revisited? Yeah, just kind of wanted to see if you had anything to say about old Zelda or old Link.
For sure, yeah. I can't remember if I spoke on this previously, but during that Games Club, I went and I think I played mostly everything. I might have skipped 1 or 2.
You even played Zelda 2.
Yeah, I mean that's truly the worst, if not one of the worst games I've ever played, and that's just like, hey, kudos to Zelda for giving us some of the best games and one of the worst games ever. I mean,
too funny.
Yeah, but Wind Waker is something that I kind of was like brushing my nose up against when it was like first announced because, I wasn't all in on the cell shading animations.
Yeah.
At the time, now I'm all in for it. That's an incredible game from beginning to end. I thoroughly enjoyed my time with that. I also got to play the entirety of Twilight Princess, which
right.
I'd say story-wise might be, my number 2.
Okay.
After Ocarina of Time, maybe?
Yeah.
And then Skyward Sword. I was a little bit turned off by the Wiimote controls, but when it got re-released for the Switch, I picked it up there, and yeah, another great addition to the story. And the more recent ones, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, I gotta say, full disclosure, never beat either of them.
Oh, I didn't know that. I think I assumed you had finished Breath of the Wild, but as we were talking about this, I was like, did July even play Tears of the Kingdom? So yeah, go ahead.
I did play Tears of the Kingdom. This is what happens to me with these big, giant, open world-ish games. I get so stuck in my quest to do all these other side missions and get the best equipment and whatnot that when I know I'm getting closer to the end of the main story, that feels like, oh, if I finish this, I'm not going to come back and do the rest of the side quest stuff. And then that also gives me the excuse to be like, well, I'll put it down for now. I'll move on to something else. I'll come back, and then I never come back to it. So that's what happened with Breath of the Wild, and that's what happened with Tears of the Kingdom. Although I'm pretty sure I'm close to the end on both of those.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Thanks for the little Zelda catch up, though. That was really fun. Lastly, July, whether I want to know about if there's a game you're looking forward to playing. This could be a game that has come out that you haven't had the chance to play. It could be an old game that you've been meaning to get to for years, or it could be something that, like, you know, we just heard got announced for next year or something. Does anything come to mind for you?
Yeah, there's I want to say there's one for sure, and there's another one that I briefly brought up. I mean, I'd love to pick up and play Silent Hill 2 Remake. I never played the original one. I know that is another one that's highly regarded as one of the greatest games of all time. So I'd love to pick that up. And another big one is Astropod.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's been getting a lot of great reviews, and I see that it's like doing gangbusters and selling a ton of units, and I'm like, I enjoyed my time with the other Astrobot game, and yeah, I want to do that. I think I will do it sometime at the end of this month.
Do you already have that game?
No. But here's the thing with me. I always have like a huge backlog of games, and so I feel like I want to. This is my little objective for myself. I want to finish through at least one of the games I already have before I throw down some dough to get something else. Well, so I try to do that.
That's, first of all, here's to you. Cheerio. Very smart.
Thank you.
What I was going to say was, I've been trying to get anybody else to borrow that game. Amanda's playing it right now. She's almost she's about at the end. Once she's done, dude, if you want to borrow it and not even have to lay down some of your hard-earned bones, feel free to take it.
Hey, I'd love that.
I love loaning out games to people. It's part of why, genuinely, one of the reasons I like to get physical media, why I still buy PS5 games on disc, even though it's unnecessary. July, thank you so much for, catching us up on your recent time with video games. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll finally get into all things Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door. So I'll see you on the other side. Welcome back to Call Me By Your Game. Connor McCabe still here with my guest for today's episode, July Diaz. July, welcome back.
Hey, happy to be back.
We are finally going to get into the main event for today's episode and discuss your time with Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door. But before we do, I'm going to do some table setting and talk about what the heck this game is. I'm sure many listeners are familiar, but why not? Again, July, like I said before the show, if you want to interject at any time or add stuff on, please do.
Okay.
Hope after the first word I say, you interrupt me.
I'll be sparingly with what I interrupt you with. I'll say that.
Well, here we go. Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door is a 2004 role-playing video game developed by Intelligent Systems and published by Nintendo for the GameCube. The Thousand-Year Door is the second game in the Paper Mario series, following, of course, Paper Mario, and is part of the larger Mario franchise and one of the I think I would sort of categorize three different, I could see an argument for four different Mario RPG spin-offs. We've, of course, got Paper, we've got Mario and Luigi, which, are you a fan of those games at all?
I love the first, I want to say 2 or 3.
Yes.
I think I'm sure I would love the other ones. I just never played them. But definitely the first 2 I love.
I want to be forced into playing one of them because I've liked every second I've spent with those games, but I've also not. I think I played 4 hours of Bowser's Inside Story. And that was the most I've ever played. But anyway, we've got Paper Mario, Mario and Luigi. We have. Oh, that might be it. And then the other one I was thinking of is the Mario plus Rabbids. I know it's it's more of a tactics game, but
Mm-hmm.
could see an argument for that. So, you know, it's one of the arms of the Mario RPG series. In this game,
Outside of classic RPG, Legend of the Seven Stars.
yes, which like I see in the even though it's also different than the Paper Mario series, I feel like they have the same lineage in a way. Have you played Legend of the Seven Stars?
So that's a game I've never played,
Ooh.
and then of course that's also a game that got a remake that I heard was great. But I don't know. I feel like I'm torn if I should play the original and then play the remake, or just go all in on the remake So
I finally, after like playing a couple hours of that game my whole life, I finally play, like, I feel like this happens where it's kind of like when you wash your car is when it'll suddenly rain. It's like a way to get, if like you're in a drought in your area, wash your car and you'll get the rain you need. I streamed an entire playthrough of Super Mario RPG at the beginning of 2023, and then at some point that year they announced a remake that came out in the fall.
Yep.
And so while I will say I think the original holds up very well, I don't think you need to. I think the remake would do you fine.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I'll pick that up as well.
Anyway, back to this. In the game, in Thousand Year Door, when Mario and Princess Peach get involved in the search for a mystic treasure that holds a great fortune, Peach is kidnapped by an alien group called the X-Nauts. Mario sets out to find the treasure and save the princess starting in a town called Rogueport. The Thousand Year Door borrows many gameplay elements from its predecessor, the original game on the Nintendo 64, such as the drawing-based paper art style and the turn-based battle system, emphasizing correct timing moves, both on offense and defense, and also like the original Paper Mario. In battle, you are controlling Mario, and if you have one, a partner character, which in this game are like spin-offs on, I know we talked about Sweepy the Broom, but spin-offs on like Bob-ombs, Koopa, Goomba, all that sort of thing.
And sometimes just original Ghost Ladies.
Sometimes original Ghost Ladies. It's very true. For most of the game, the player controls Mario, although Bowser and Princess Peach are also playable at certain points between chapters. This game was announced at the 2003 Game Developers Conference and was released in late July in Japan and late 2004 worldwide. In fact, let me look up the specific date for the North America release, because I remember this coming out.
It's like October or something.
That sounds right to me. October 11th, 2004. So the game is officially 20 years old. And lastly, great. So the last little paragraph I have to say here is a little bit about the legacy of the game. It was acclaimed at release and is since considered one of the greatest video games of all time. It won the Console RPG Game of the Year at the 8th Annual Interactive Achievement Awards. I feel like any game could find like a like niche award show that gave it an award. But
yeah,
this game is amazing. It was considered... it kind of has the legacy of being the best game in the series before Nintendo started having the series operate in a different way. They went off of the path that the series was headed down, which has brought on a lot of controversy and like I would say factions of fans. There are people like I find myself kind of in the middle where I love the innovation.
Like Malcolm.
I'm always seen myself as a Frankie Muniz of sorts.
Oh yeah.
And I see you, July, as my dad, Hal.
Frank, yeah.
Yeah. And where a lot of people who have played the Paper Mario series, I would say the loudest contingent is a contingency that I don't totally disagree with, which wishes they were just like this game, where you had a partner, and it was a traditional RPG battles, and other people really like how they embrace new and do something new with every game. I don't mind that. I feel like there's a happy medium. We've heard over the years, we don't need to get into all of it today, but there's been a lot of talk, especially as Origami King got released on Switch, that Nintendo, it came out that they basically, it was an arbitrary choice saying they didn't have the option to make these type of games anymore when they always have. So that was weird. Did you want to say anything about that? Otherwise, I'm just gonna finish off this legacy portion. I don't know if you have an opinion or whatnot.
I tend to. I think I agree with you. I'm in the middle of it. I think I played a bit of Origami King. I did not have any issues with the gameplay in that. I thought the gameplay in that was fun. I think for me, just the storylines and the characters, I just didn't feel as invested in them as I did with these first two games.
Yes.
So I think that's where I kind of lean toward maybe going back to the drawing board and I want a Paper Mario game like this. Like, I don't necessarily want all the same battle mechanics, but I mean, this game has a lot of cool, funny dialogue in it, and that's what I enjoy about the game, really.
Yeah. I've heard that, as someone who's not kept up with the series after this one, I've only played the first two, although I do own Super Paper Mario on the Wii. I do want to play that one. As someone who falls into that category, I've heard that the writing stays pretty good. It's that people miss the original characters that these first two games were allowed to just create and kind of go wild with. I'm sure there have to be original characters in the other Paper Marios, but
for sure.
But I know what they're saying about the partner system and all that jazz.
Yeah. I mean, playing it again recently when the remake came out, I found and I probably hadn't played this game since it came out. Again, because it's now it's so hard to find, and I own a copy of the original. I just misplaced it. I don't know where it's at, but and I wasn't about to spend. I mean, we talked a little bit about this, but the resale market before the remake of the game came out, it was in the high hundreds if you wanted to pick up a copy of this GameCube version of the game, and that's a lot. That's a lot for a now 20-year-old game.
It really is. I guess to finish this part off, and we can finally hear about your time with it. We talked about the remake that was released for the Nintendo Switch earlier this year, and the sequel, a game I just referenced as well, Super Paper Mario, which incorporates more platforming elements, was released for the Wii in 2007. Yeah, the series is still going. I mean, we got the remake, but Origami King came out in 2020, I want to say, and yeah, Paper Mario is alive, and most would say well. July. Getting into your personal history with the game, do you remember how Thousand Year Door came into your life way back when, or is it a game that you just at this point look back and just remember having?
It was the Christmas of 2004 when the game came out, or right around the time the game came out, and I got two games. I got this, and I got Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. They could not be the most polar opposites,
dude,
but man, that was a great pair. Yes, that's just for me, that was the greatest year in gaming for me at the time, for that year, into the next year too, because I played those two games so much when I got them.
That's such a nice variety between the two and styles of games. I mean, you're turning on presumably your PS2 to play San Andreas. You're turning on the GameCube to play Paper Mario: Thousand Year Door. Yeah. And I'm remembering July. We did me and Matt Apodaca did a holiday memories episode last year, and I remember you talking about this. So of course you remember when you got this game.
Yeah, of course, and. Yeah,
had you played the original?
The original
before this one came out, Paper Mario?
Yes, I have. I had already played the original, and so this, I already knew what I was kind of getting into with this, but this felt like a grand expansion.
Yes,
in both story and just gameplay wise. Like, there was a lot of cool new abilities. I believe the badge system was already in the original Paper Mario,
Pretty
but
sure,
this but this expanded. This added the cool curse
yes.
abilities where you get cursed by these evil spirits, but in reality they're giving you like cool paper abilities.
Yeah.
Like turning into a paper airplane to cross large gaps, or turning into like a little tube so you can get underneath little gaps. So that was awesome. And then introducing all the new partner characters in this, which we talked briefly about them, but it has like a cool like variation and like diverse cast of characters with their own cool abilities, and I never find myself sticking to one. It does a great job of kind of pushing you toward like, oh, you should be using your little Yoshi partner for this area, or you should be using Vivian, who's just like this shadow character, so that you can like hide from other characters, or using the big the new ghost woman,
Mrs. Flurry, is that her name?
Yes, Mrs. Flurry, who can blow pages away from the actual stage and like unlock new pathways.
I mean, you even bringing that up, July. Not only do I totally agree. I love the partners in this game, and I love like I felt like this more than the first one. I was encouraged to use them more in battle and outside of battle, but I love a game like in RPGs like this where it's not the most complicated puzzle solving or platforming, but they give you enough fun abilities to toy with in the world. Like, I forgot about Mrs. Flurry's, we'll call it her blow ability, where she blows, because this game has such the papercraft element to it. Like, sometimes there may be a panel of paper on the screen that you can remove by using her ability. So
yes,
I love that stuff. So for you, it's kind of like the partners are one of the first things that come to mind. I guess what I'm hearing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the partners always stick in my mind, especially Miss Mouse.
Oh, I mean, Humana.
And also, I just love a character that is clearly inspired by Catwoman, but it's a mouse.
Yes.
And it's that same kind of dynamic. Well, it's a one-sided dynamic in this, where Miss Mouse is just overly flirting with Mario.
Yep.
And kissing him upon they first meet.
He's getting a smooch every time, it feels like. Yeah, this game is just so full of personality. Do you remember, I know you had played, we're kind of bouncing around if you don't mind, but I know you had played the original Paper Mario. Do you remember, if you can think back, was this a game you were looking forward to? I mean, you got it for Christmas, so I assume it wasn't an accident.
It definitely was. I don't remember how much it was in my radar. I definitely knew it was out because, it had been out for at least 2 months already. And this had to be, I'm trying to remember. I feel like I used to frequent my local Toys R Us quite a bit back when they had like a video game section, and I'm pretty sure that's where I first saw it.
Did you? Yeah. Were you a Nintendo Power kid?
I wasn't. I was more when I did subscribe to a gaming magazine, Electronic Gaming Monthly. I'd say, okay. Yeah. But not to say I didn't own the occasional Nintendo Power, but I never subscribed to Nintendo Power.
Sure. Yeah. I've had Nintendo Power for a while growing up. I think from like, I want to say 2000-ish to maybe like 2004 or 5. And I really missed that magazine, but I missed out on like EGM. Did you ever have Game Informer? Because I didn't.
I did briefly. Yeah. Whenever I started frequenting GameStop.
Yes.
For sure.
Well, that makes sense. R.I.P. Game Informer. So we've talked about a couple elements in this game. Do you remember, like, this game, I feel like when I think about it, I think about the amazing chapters, because it's a chapter system where, kind of like in the original, you're collecting star spirits. In this one, jog my memory, what is the sort of like MacGuffin at the end of each chapter. Is it another star-based thing?
It is. They're the crystal stars, which I believe it's similar to the first game. When you acquire one, they give Mario like a super ability to use during battle, which I don't think we really talked about this yet, but in battles, there is an audience. You're like on a stage and you're performing / battling in front of an audience of different characters depending on where the story is taking place at the time. Yeah. So you can be at one point battling in front of a crowd of other Koopas or Boos, and sometimes they'll cheer when you're doing well, and that fills up your meter to be able to use these abilities from the crystal shards. And also the crowd can interact with you in different ways. Like if they like you, they'll throw out items for you to use in battle, or if they don't like you, or if it's a crowd of the same enemy that you're battling, they'll throw rocks at you or junk like cans or bottles.
Yes.
And you have to do your best to kind of dodge those.
Yeah, we talked about the timing-based elements of this, at least the first two games in the series, which I love an excuse to pay attention in a battle as opposed to just using, water gun at the top of every one of them. So It really does keep you on your feet to pay attention, not just on offense and defense, but like in those transitional moments. Because like sometimes not only will the audience, throw something at you, but a light will just fall from the stage. So like the stage has its own elements, or I think too, if you make I don't know if this is why it happens, but my impression was that the stage wall would sometimes fall down on you. I don't know if you did a strong move or the enemy did, but I did love that little theater element to it at the time. And it's just added to this game's personality, I feel like.
Totally, and I think there's also an added feature of, depending on when you press the A button during one of your moves, you can do a stylish move, and
love it.
Depending on what move it is, or the higher caliber of move, you can do many stylish moves within one of the moves, and that gets the audience on your side and gives you more cheer and kind of builds up your meter more.
Yeah, I remember both playing this game when it came out, because I think I borrowed it from a friend for a little while, but I also during my full playthrough at the beginning of 2020 when I got my copy, which the YouTube viewers can see right there, my little Player's Choice copy. I remember I like to challenge myself to use those certain. We talked about the badge system a bit, but we kind of just grazed over it afterwards. Like the original game. You can choose to have a certain number. You have a certain number of badge points, and based on that number, you can attach badges to Mario. Meaning, it might up your attack, or it might give you an ability, like the ability to, do a quake move with your hammer, where it hurts every enemy on the ground. But what I was getting to was that I liked to, depending on the area, it would obviously switch up my loadout, but I'd love to hear from you. I liked using ones like the multi-bounce, where you could see if I can time this right enough times, you can basically get rid of an enemy or take out most of their health by just hitting the timing of jumping on their head. Do you remember any go-to strategies of yours with loadouts, or what you like to do?
Oh, for sure. So real quick, I'll say when you level up in the game, you are given the choice to either upgrade your heart, which is your health, or flower points, which is the points you have to be able to use special moves.
Essentially your magic points.
Yes, magic points, and badge points. So the more badge points you have, the more badges you can equip. So I remember early on, definitely on my first playthrough of the original game, I would go into upgrading my health and flower points more so than the badges. On my recent playthrough with the remake, I went less with the health and more with the flower points and the badges, so that I can have many badge points, so I can use a lot of different abilities, and I also enjoy multi-bounce. I also enjoy there's a badge where you can throw your hammer, the hammer throw badge, or any sort of elemental ability with your hammer, like flames or ice, so you can freeze or burn your enemies. Those are cool. But also the ones that once I acquire them and always have on whenever is the badges that make you impervious to spikes and flame, which is cool because it does that outside of battle as well. So you can essentially just walk on spikes.
Yes, I just love we talked about moves out of battle too for you and your characters, but I love any time that it has like kind of a multi-use like that. Yeah, those are great. I even like the sort of aesthetic badges, whether you want to put on like Luigi or Waluigi's outfit or Wario, or one even might just be like a sound that you make. I don't remember exactly what it is.
Yeah,
Does that sound familiar?
There's a number of those. I believe in the very first chapter, you have to equip what's called a frog sound badge, because that's the weakness for the big boss dragon. They don't like the sound of a frog, so you equip that, and all your moves sound like a frog.
It's so silly.
Yeah.
Gosh. I know we're not like, unfortunately, like as if this were like a games club, we're not gonna be able to touch on every like moment or element in the game, but I do want to ask you, before we get into the more of the context of what you remember back then when you played it, or even the recent playthrough, is there another element that you want to discuss? Oh, we were talking about chapters. Did I bring that up yet?
Yeah, you did.
Do you have a favorite chapter from this game? Because they're so good, I feel like.
I think they're all great. I think a standout one for sure that I do remember spending a lot of time with originally, and actually this time go around, is the wrestling chapter. Mario essentially becomes a wrestler, and you have to rise through the ranks of being like a novice wrestler, doing all these like low paying battles against like all these like other like underdog characters, and then you rise the ranks to be able to go against Rock Hawk, one of the greater characters in the game.
Rock Hawk.
Yes.
Tua.
Yes.
How about that?
And what is that? I don't know what that is.
I don't know either. I just sounded good. I like that.
It sounded good.
It sounded good. That chapter is. I love the like conspiracy. How like not that like everything at this wrestling operation's not on the up and up. Like there's clearly something else going on to where Rock Hawk is able to beat anybody.
Yes.
It's so fun. The partner you get in that chapter is the baby Yoshi.
Yes.
Which you hatch, and I have this specific memory when I played this game when it came out of naming. I thought it was so funny that I named this little Yoshi Preston. I don't know why I thought that was funny, because I think you can name it. Don't you name it?
You definitely name it, and also I didn't know this till my recent playthrough. You can kind of pick the color of it too.
How does that work?
So you almost like I don't know if you've watched this is in the Pokemon game as well, as you essentially are being followed by an egg, which is a Yoshi egg.
Yes.
Almost like Togepi in Pokemon. And depending on the time between when you get the Yoshi egg and it hatches, that will determine what color it is. So let's say it's like a few minutes, it'll be green. If it's like 5 minutes, it'll be red. 6 minutes, blue, and so on and so on.
Okay. I think when I did my full playthrough, it was green, and I was disappointed because I wanted the different colored Yoshi, like pink or they have like a black one that's really cool. Just that chapter is amazing. I also like the train chapter where there's like a murder mystery.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, fun.
Any of these chapters are just so good. I'm not quite ready for a replay because it is still pretty recent for me, but I do want, and I don't have the remake yet, but I do want to get the remake remaster because I'm just going to want to have that on Switch. My GameCube's gonna die someday.
Oh, sure, yeah. We're all all our GameCubes will die someday.
It's a ticking clock.
Yes. Tick tick. TikTok. I will say some of the new additions to the remake are like some quality of life additions, which are always nice. Like, I believe this was in the original where you have warp pipes to take you to all the chapter areas that you've been to before, but I think they were more spaced out in the underground area, and now they're all located in one room.
Oh, that's nice. So you don't have to be like, wait, is this taking me to the city in the sky or what have you?
Totally, yeah. And they're labeled, and they have like a very clear, distinct like environmental. You can see like, oh, this is clearly like the first area.
Oh, okay. They sort of,
yeah.
Almost telegraph where it's going to be taking you.
Yes, and that's very helpful for some later missions where you have to kind of go back and to all the different areas. So that's cool, and I believe there's other things like now there's like a character wheel that's available on on the D-pad, so it's like you can switch through your characters very quickly instead of like pausing and going to the character menu and then switching characters.
That's nice.
Yeah. So there's like minor things like that are definitely make the gaming experience a little bit better. Yeah.
Okay. I love that. I'm definitely going to give you a chance at the end of this chat too. If there's a part of the game you didn't talk about, I'll open it back up that you really want to. But I want to get into the context of when you would have been playing this game for the first time. I want to start to July. Can you do some scene painting for me? Like what the room was like where you would have been playing Thousand Year Door growing up?
It probably would have been my bedroom, most likely.
Okay.
So I want to say at the time I might have had like one of those like which I would love to have now, like a CRT, like a mini CRT that has like the built-in VHS player.
Oh, that's what I had growing up.
You know?
Watched a lot of the Lost World Jurassic Park on that bad boy.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I definitely was probably playing it on that, and just countless hours playing it on that thing, and wish I would have had that still.
For sure. Did you share this room with a sibling? Was this your room? Did you have a twin bed? Any other details that you remember?
It was really dark. It was spooky. Yeah, it was almost like I was in a basement of sorts. Oh,
okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, from this time, since we've done a little, just a very minor, where it's a simple painting that we've done of this room. What do you remember about that time? Like it could be broad or specific. Some people have very specific stories on the show. Others, it's just like, oh, I was in. You don't have to tell me your grade because I know that's fuzzy and you don't want to give away your age. But what do you remember about that time? Is anything in particular come to mind, broad or specific?
I guess I remember going through puberty at the time.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I think I had some sort of like awakening once I saw Miss Mouse on screen.
It really jump started your puberty.
I think something happened there. It's hard to actually remember anything specifics.
Sure.
I don't think there was any like big monumental moments for me at the time. I think besides just like, I just remember having a great time with this, and of course San Andreas at in this time period.
Well, so at this time were video games one of your like main hobbies? Did you have other things as a kid around then that also you were like really interested in?
I mean, video games were the big thing for me at the time. Maybe music, I'd say too, would be second. Just listening to a lot of '90s hip hop, I'd say.
Okay. What are some artists that you think you may have been listening to?
Ooh, I mean, Tupac Shakur, of course.
Oh, Mr. Shakur.
Mr. Shakur. I think this is when I was first starting to like get into also New York rap. Like,
yes.
The Wu-Tang Clan and figuring out like who are all the members in the Wu-Tang Clan, and also like finding out that there's so many other members, quote unquote, that are name checked in one of the songs on the first album, like, or that just do like side projects and, you know, are just like associates of the Wu-Tang Clan.
That's funny. Was this something you just started listening to by yourself? Did you have like a family member who's like, hey, check out the Wu-Tang Clan?
Well, Wu-Tang Clan for me, I think that was on me. My parents listened to a lot of hip hop. I'd say like early 90s, late 80s, kind of like a lot of West Coast hip hop stuff, but
yeah,
not much of the New York stuff. So I think that was just me kind of branching out and wanting to listen to other things, and this just unlocked something. I was like essentially a moderator of a rap forum at the time.
Really?
Yeah, and that again, this was like, I haven't thought about this in a long time, but just, I don't know if you ever were like a part of forums of like a distinct like subculture of something.
Definitely, yeah.
This was like, I think it was called like Rap Godfathers forum. And the more like posts you would make, people would like gift you like, I guess how Reddit works now, where you would get like these
sort of like karma,
yeah, and you would get, but in this forum you would get different titles.
Okay. Yes.
And then eventually I became a moderator of this like forum, and yeah, I think that was like early on of like, I don't want to say LimeWire, but like these other file sharing sites where you can kind of like share like, oh, this is like the new single for Method Man's new album, or what have you.
Sure.
So yeah, I'd say it was, when I wasn't gaming, it was doing that as well.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
I would have never guessed, but that's a really fun detail that we ended up finding there.
Yeah, and I think I must have done that for a few years, because at some point the forum kind of dissolved, and then that, for me, I kind of moved to Tumblr to kind of do that kind of stuff, but it didn't feel the same.
Okay, sure. Is this a lot of this going on from like family computer, something like that, or at school?
Totally, yeah, a mix of both for sure.
Okay, sure.
And I think, looking back on it now, I must have been like the youngest person to be posting about all that stuff and sharing songs and whatnot.
A wonderkin moderator.
Yeah.
Like this is less of a specific question about the time, but at this point, like looking back at, because I love that era of hip hop. Do you have you talked about Wu-Tang. Is there another group or artist that to this day you're like, that's probably my favorite? You can even shout out a couple if you want to.
I mean, early Eminem. I mean, I still love Eminem now.
Yes.
Of course, but all the like some Shady LP, Marshall Mathers LP, that kind of era, and also a lot of the West Coast artists, Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre,
NWA. I know it was a little before that, but
sure, yeah. I think that. So, I'd say that stuff I got into much later.
Yeah.
Even after this, I'd say. But at the time, it was a lot of that, Warren G, and yeah, like I said, a lot of like the East Coast rappers, so Wu-Tang, Jay-Z, Nas.
Do you like Tribe?
Love Tribe. I think that was a little later for me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. I had like, growing up, I had this music sort of like introduced to me through, you've done podcasts with my friend Eddie, but Eddie's older brothers would like listen to stuff, burn CDs, give them to him, and then he would like give them to me. And this was kind of the era for me too, right around here where I started listening to like hip hop, some stuff that was modern, but like mostly stuff that had come a little before it. Like I think I've listened to Wu-Tang plenty in my life, but like specifically that time was when I was getting into it. And now I would say Tribe Called Quest is probably like my favorite rap group, period. But I didn't also listen to them really. I mean, I sampled them, but until genuinely like 2015, like whenever Phife Dawg passed away, is like suddenly a podcast I used to listen to, unrelated to hip hop, it like really hit the host hard. And so like I was doing this job where I was driving around a bunch for like I was working in digital production, and so I was just like honestly a PA driving a truck, and I was just listening to so much Tribe Called Quest back in the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also have fond memories of just like listening to stuff like that in my room while I would play games. So not that I needed to make a connection with you there, but that
totally,
I'm kind of remembering now too that was a big time of like music discovery for the first time in my life, really.
And totally, and I think at the time, and I try to still do this now, is the experience of listening to the album from beginning to end and not just like picking and choosing like a track here and there or like singles and whatnot.
I'm like, I'm start to finish, I'm listening to this.
Yeah, and for sure Tribes, like I'd say, has some of the greatest like just albums from beginning to end.
Big time.
Yeah. Midnight Excursions.
Oh man.
Sure. Yeah.
Low End Theory.
Yeah,
I could go through another phase right now if I needed to.
Yeah.
That's really cool, July. I love those details. Speaking of, I was thinking of both. I'll finally get us back on track, but before I do, I was thinking of Eminem the other day because Amanda and I watched 21 Jump Street, and that movie opens with the Real Slim Shady song.
Oh yeah.
And it's just, first of all, if you haven't seen that movie in a while, it's still hilarious, is what I'll say. Did you see that in 22 Jump Street?
I've definitely seen the first one. I don't know if I've ever saw 22 Jump Street.
22 is pretty good. They go to college. I would say it's a little drop off from the first one, but it's still the comedy's still pretty good, even if the story doesn't hold up as much. But anyway,
are you going through like a Channing Tatum's filmography, or?
I'm really going through that, and I started with 21 Jump Street, but I'm just gonna jump around kind of a bunch.
Next one is Deadpool Wolverine, just for his Gambit.
That's
appearance.
Next on the list for sure.
Okay. Great.
So I'll get us back on track by saying, July, I know we've talked a lot about both the game and your time with it. Are there any details, whether it be like life context or game specific stuff, that you want to shout out before we keep this train rolling?
Well, I don't think we talked about this. The music in this game is just, it unlocks like, yes, I feel like I'm back in my basement dungeon on the rat forums.
Yes.
Especially that intro song. I think it does a great job. Like the original Paper Mario, it's just like a very distinct, like earworm type of song that just, oh yeah, I know what I'm getting myself into. But also, it does a good job of that. This is a very hard thing to do. Overworld music that I won't necessarily get sick of hearing over and over again. You know, it's very cool that way. And in this remake, they kind of remix all the tracks to add extra instruments here and there, like some horns and some violins, and that's a nice little injection of new life to some of these tracks. That's really awesome.
Nice. I'm glad to hear that you feel that way about the music, especially the overworld stuff. Like, I really like the Rogueport music, but I would be worried that someone would get sick of it. So I'm glad to hear that. I mean, maybe that could be an outlier for you, but it sounds like you also really like the Rogueport one.
Yeah,
you spend probably the most time in that one.
For sure. I think, I have no qualms with the Rogueport music. I mean, it's no like Hyrule overworld music. I mean, that's something for me, I will never get sick of that stuff or that tune. But anything else I'd like to bring up? I guess the sections where you play as Peach and Bowser,
Oh my gosh, yeah.
those are a nice like little switch up from like just the main story. And I think you do you play as Peach in Paper Mario Original as well? I think you maybe do.
I don't know. I can't remember. It's been so long since I played that one.
Yeah, but I definitely know you don't play as Bowser in that. I think playing as Bowser in this is the first time
Yes.
you kind of get to do that. And there's a cool like remixed version of Super Mario Bros. In this, but you're playing as Bowser in a side-scrolling mission.
Just bulldozing through the level and the structures.
Yes, yeah, that's fun. Yeah, I mean, I could. There's so much to say about this, but those are the only other big things I would like to mention.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's kind of hard when talking about a game you really love. You're like, I could do this for hours, but
oh yeah.
So to sort of wrap this this main event of the podcast up.
Oh wait, sorry, I did remember one last thing.
Please.
There's an amazing section of the game where your identity gets stolen.
Oh yeah.
By a character, and you're just a shadow of yourself, and the only way to revert back to yourself is to like find a missing letter somewhere hidden in the game, so that you can have the ability to type out a thing so that you can reverse the curse, which I don't think I've ever seen anything like that before.
Because aren't you like you're entering text in a
Yes.
text box, and
Yes.
one letter is just missing from your options?
Yes, it's like you
Yes.
forgot a letter or something.
Yeah, kind of I wouldn't necessarily call that like a meta choice, but a very interesting one for like a game mechanic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of honestly, I don't think you've played the Alan Wake series. It's actually very Alan Wake.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I feel like that's the whole game. Well, July, to wrap up, this main event talking about Paper Mario, would you do me a favor and just like if you could put a bow on the place that this game holds for you, that would be great.
Sure, I think it's definitely a top RPG in general for me. I think in the grander scheme of like Mario games in general, I think if I think of my favorites, of course, of like the mainline Mario games, I'm including this up there with those. I mean, this goes side to side with Super Mario World for me as just like a great Mario game and also RPG. And yeah, I think you mentioned this before, but it's definitely in my top 10 games of all time list for good reason. I mean, I think it also has like a great replayability aspect to it. I mean, and there's also like so much like side quests, fun stuff.
Oh yeah, it's pretty deep there.
It's pretty deep, and it does a great job at like at the mechanic of like the RPG where it's a lot of the characters are just speaking through text, and so there's a lot of reading, but I don't ever feel like that's a chore necessarily. Yeah. It's always like a very engaging, funny experience.
Agreed. Yeah, it's so clever and charming. Mm-hmm. And July, thanks for bringing this game on. I was like really stoked that you threw it out there and glad that no one had talked about it before. So I'm glad it could be you, pal. Thanks for doing it.
Yeah, of course. Always got to shout out this game. Love this game. And also just like I love the aesthetics of it,
Yeah, it's the GameCube version. I last played it on the Wii with like some component cables, and boy, did it look good. I'm sure the remake's gorgeous.
Oh yeah, beautiful.
To close us out, I've got 2 post-show segments. The first of which is the Fact Me by Your Game segment, July, where I'm just going to share a couple fun facts with you about this game.
Great.
The first of which, well, actually both of these come from the YouTube channel Did You Know Gaming. There's a few Paper Mario episodes. These come from the episode titled Paper Mario Secrets. And the first one, fact that I've titled Changing Rooms. So the X-Naut Fortress features a changing room that can be accessed from a ceiling duct. And this is when you're playing as Mario. It's at a certain point later in the game when you infiltrate the fortress. So when Mario and his partner emerge from this changing room after they sort of fall into it from a duct above, they're displayed as 8-bit sprite versions of themselves. Do you remember this part in the game?
Yes. I recently did this, and I tried it with all the different side characters. There is they all look great in that style. And I think I know what you're going to say, but go ahead. Okay.
Well, it is suspected that Peach was also supposed to be able to use this changing room. Is that where you thought I was going?
Mm-hmm.
So, and the reason that this is because there is an unused 8-bit Peach sprite that's found in the game's files, but was unused in the game itself.
Yeah, that seems a little odd to me because there are... I mean, if I remember right, you are going through this whole section as Peach for the most part, so I don't see why cut this out of the game, It's a fun little Easter egg.
I wonder if it's just like, they realized that room that you go in as Mario, she doesn't really need to access during her middle interstitial chapters, but yeah, it's a good question. The second fact and the final one I have just titled Translated in North America. Now, Thousand Year Door was the first Paper Mario game to be translated in North America as opposed to Japan, which is where the first game was translated to English. And this is said to have led to a more like basic localization in the first one. The first game has plenty of charm, but I feel like you can really feel the difference in specificity in this game's translation. The Nintendo Treehouse was the group that did that for Thousand Year Door, which allowed them to do the localizers to do a little more with the game's writing, despite things being revised before the final release. Of course, there was some tweaking, but that's the end of the fun facts, the Fact Me By Your Game segment. July, I'll lead us into the final one, the game recommendations. Now, you've been on the show before. You probably remember this is my one forced tie-in to the movie Call Me By Your Name, where I'm going to treat Thousand Year Door like your passionate summer love that you have in Italy. This romantic fling that it's not going to work out, but I want to help you get over that heartbreak, July. That's why I'm here.
Okay.
So I have 3 recommendations for 3 potential new flings for you that all have a little something in common with the game, because I find that a little familiarity goes a long way. So
I hope they have has Peach in it, like this game.
Crossing my fingers. So the first of which is that if what you got out of Paper Mario is that leaving that game, you're like, I want another paper aesthetic RPG, but I really want it to get back to the Paper Mario roots. I'm going to recommend a game, I feel like you know this, called Bug Fables: The Everlasting Sapling. Did you hear about this game that came out in 2019?
I don't think I did. I'm gonna look it up real quick.
It's very much a spiritual successor to specifically Thousand Year
Door.
Oh,
I have seen this. Yes.
Yeah, it's a game that I want to play that I've never touched that apparently was pretty dang good.
Yeah, I'm putting it on my list.
I love it. The second recommendation is that if what you loved about this game is that it was an RPG sequel that outclassed the original, and you want another game that does that, but with a different style, I'll recommend to you a sequel to a game I know you've played, and that is Mass Effect 2.
Okay.
Yes. I know we played Mass Effect for our games club at the beginning of the year. That was fantastic. You ended up liking that game, didn't you?
I did. I did have a great time with the game once I got acquainted with the mechanics of it, for sure.
Yes. Part 2, July, I played it this year for a co-op episode over the summer. It's way better. It's so good. Okay. So if you like the first one, you'll like this. And lastly, July, is if the thing you walked away from the Thousand Year Door with was that you just want to play a game with a little mouse that just won't leave you alone, like Mrs. Mouse, I'll recommend a game called Hey You, Pikachu for the Nintendo 64.
Okay. I don't think I've ever played that.
Yeah, I never played it either, but, it's a game out there. Pikachu keeps bugging you. July, I'll wrap up this section by recapping the 3 recs. We have Bug Fables, Mass Effect 2, and Hey You, Pikachu. That'll do it for this segment, and that will bring us to the end of the show. So before we go, July, and plug whatever we want, dude, thanks for coming back. You're a favorite on the network. You're a favorite of mine. Thanks for talking to me about Thousand Year Door. This was a blast.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Well, on your way out, dude, I know you got improv shows. You've got other stuff going on. What do you want to plug? Where can the listeners find you?
Yeah, you can find me at the UCB Theater every first Friday and fourth Friday of the month. That's UCB Franklin Theater in Los Angeles, performing alongside my improv team Menudo. And you can also listen to me on the Super NPC Games Club. When you're listening to this, we're talking about Death Stranding. Or you can listen to previous episodes where we're talking about different games. And also Inside Video Games Classic. You can go back and listen to those episodes. And also, I want to give you a real quick recommendation. Since you gave me 3 things, I'll give you 3 things. But these aren't games. These are this is brand new music, which I'm sure you've maybe heard some of this stuff. But yeah, so. Number 1, Glorilla. Are you familiar with Glorilla?
I'm not.
So she has a fantastic album. It just came out in October. It's called Glorious. It's a banger from beginning to end.
All right.
Check that out. LL Cool J has a brand new album.
Ladies Love?
Ladies Love, and it is entirely produced, you're going to love this, by Q-Tip of a Tribe Called Quest.
I'm in.
And let me tell you, he has not lost any steps with his rhyming ability. There's a song on the album, him and Eminem. I think he goes toe-to-toe with Eminem.
Wow.
And finally, Tyler, the Creator's new album just came out, Chromacopia. Another great album from beginning to end.
I gotta listen to that. I like Tyler a lot.
Yeah. So, yeah, those are my 3 recs for you.
Okay, July. Wow. It's not every day I get a recommendation as the host of the show.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I'll put those, everything you plugged in the show notes, including the stuff I'm about to plug to close us out. Okay. Beginning with the cover art, which is done by the artist Glenn J. You can find him on Instagram with his at the handle Glenn with 2 Ns.jay to find some wonderful art he's made for not just this podcast, but all sorts of stuff and original art that he makes himself. This show is produced and edited by the great Jeremy Schmidt. You can give him a thank you for the work he puts into the show by listening to his podcast, Video Games, a Comedy Show. You can also follow me all over social media, including on Twitch at twitch.tv/consiscool69, where I've been playing, I just finished The Secret of Monkey Island 1. I'm about to start my playthrough of The Secret of Monkey Island 2, which is November's co-op episode, a bonus that releases on YouTube and on our Patreon. You can follow the show all over social media, Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky. And lastly is if you like me and the conversations I have with people about video games, and if you like July, check us out on Patreon over at patreon.com/Super NPC Radio for our current games club on Death Stranding, for bonus episodes that I do at the end of the month, and more. And then if you want to get a little preview of that for free, we have a free feed for our legacy games clubs at Super NPC Games Club, wherever you get your podcast. There's a link to that in the show notes, where we're currently re-releasing our Pokemon Games Club, where we went through the original Pokemon games. It's about halfway through. But that's going to do it for another episode of Call Me By Your Game. We will see you on the next one.